Wow. I can't say I'm completely surprised. I've been paying attention to this team for far too long to be completely surprised, but I kind of am a little bit. The West Virginia Mountaineers lose, and lose isn't the word. I think I put it in my game recap over there at WV Sports Now. They got decimated by Texas Tech, 48-10 in Lubbock. Now 3-4 on the season, and that's the third conference loss in the Big 12. The vibes are bad. The feelings are bad. How can anybody be asked to trust the climb right now? I'm Mike Asti, and again, this is our West Virginia Mountaineers postgame show for WV Sports Now. And just was bad all the way around. And I think West Virginia fans, the team, I know, expected this going into this game, that it wasn't exactly similar to Baylor, but they were going to be facing a very aggressive offense that would go for it on fourth down like a video game. Way more so than even Baylor did. And yeah, West Virginia beat Baylor. That was a big win. That was a necessary win at that time. The vibes were better then. People started looking at maybe some of the losses were to good teams. Some of the wins were now getting better with that Baylor victory actually being a legit win. You could certainly argue the Townsend game is FCS and Virginia Tech's just not good. But the Baylor win felt okay. They were a ranked team prior to that and just lost, but it was to a top 10 team. So that felt fine. And West Virginia's offense was able to click and hang. Their defense was able to force turnovers. It was an exciting atmosphere, a big game. And there were arguments that finally was the big win for Neil Brown. And maybe this team could crawl into a bowl game, make the feelings better about next year, and the buyout being why he's definitely going to stay, and the recruiting classes that are solid that are coming in for future seasons. But then in this game, and they expected a similar team they were facing, but an even more aggressive Texas Tech team, 6 out of their first 7 converted on fourth down for Texas Tech. And that was, by the way, converting 6 of their first 6. So they were a perfect 6 for 6 right away. The sack then stopped them and made it 6 for 7. But then West Virginia did nothing on offense. The difference of this game versus the Baylor game is against Baylor, West Virginia's offense with JT Daniels, and it was one of the better offenses in the country. Even digging further into analytics, West Virginia's offense was really, really good. The points were there. The yards were there. No, it didn't have the most points and yards in the country, but the top 10 ranking that some could argue, if you really dig into analytics, made sense. 51% of the time, they were driving the ball 50 yards or more. So it was production from the offense and a kicker that was perfect. And that was enough against Baylor when you add those turnovers. And yeah, the defense helped them win that game. You take away the takeaways, and West Virginia doesn't beat Baylor, but the turnovers helped them, and that was just a funky game, and the offense was good enough to allow a turnover or two and momentum swing or two to matter. None of that would even have mattered in this game because West Virginia's offense was just so bad. There's no defending the offense in this one. West Virginia's offense had been good enough in prior games they lost. Absolutely good enough against Kansas. The defense let them down. Not great, but okay against Texas, but they were just behind the 8 ball right away, so it's difficult to scheme. And again, that's on the defense. The defense bad in this one again, but really, really banged up, of course, despite Charles Woods and others getting back out there. It didn't matter because then they lose others, and it was just a rough go. Sean Martin, of course, no longer out there now for West Virginia defensively. You can't say the defense had a good game, but the offense had their worst game all year, 100% worse than Texas. JT Daniels had the worst game as a West Virginia quarterback he's had yet this season, and you could argue the worst game of his career, really, because he hadn't had a 3-interception game since in college at all, since high school, if he even had it there, and hadn't had a 2-interception game since 2018. So this is the worst game JT Daniels maybe has ever played in his football life, and it was at a really, really bad time. But against Baylor, the offense was good enough. It clicked. It could score right with Baylor. As they were aggressive, so was West Virginia. Then the turnovers swung the game. This game, it didn't matter. Yeah, some controversy of a touchdown being called back early, but Texas Tech was just going to score every drive, it almost felt like. what was it, 5 out of the last 6 there in the second half. I mean, their offense was ridiculous. They just kept on moving and kept on scoring. So unless West Virginia was going to have the best offensive day for them all season, it wouldn't have mattered what else happened, unless you're going to see double the takeaways from the Baylor game. And that just couldn't occur. 3 interceptions for JT Daniels, all very, very costly. As much as turnovers helped the Mountaineers against Baylor, they really killed them and hurt them against Texas Tech. And this team now sitting at 3-4, only the one conference win. 1-3 there. This is year 4 for Neil Brown. I honestly feel like, in terms of trying to write takeaways or commentaries and features out of this, it's death, taxes, and the same thing every week. I mean, honestly, I could throw up the something gotta give story that I put up at WVU Sports Now that you can find if you search the site, and I put it on my Twitter from weeks ago. And then maybe things were turning around. I kind of maybe had to pull it back. I'll be honest with you, and I've been critical of Neil Brown. I absolutely have. I said something got to give. I said before the season that he had to be on the hot seat. I said he had to get at least 6 wins, or there would maybe have to be something that was changed. And I fully understand the buyout at $16.7 million. He's not going to go anywhere. I do agree, the defenders of him, that these games have mostly been close, with the exception of obviously this one and the Texas game. I do agree that there are a lot of good things he's done at the program. He's a really, really nice guy. I like him, honestly, as a person. And he's done a lot of great things in terms of ingratiating former players, bringing the family atmosphere back. Again, I get why recruits want to play for this man. Jaheim White said it. He told me on Twitter, I want to go to West Virginia for that staff. You get rid of that staff, are you losing the top recruits? Rodney Gallagher as well. They like Neil Brown. Now, obviously, they may like Graham Harrell as well, who's the offensive coordinator. Obviously, they may, like Jordan Leslie as well. They're all a part of it. Who knows about his future? The defense has been rough this year, but the defense was good the prior seasons under Neil Brown. And Graham Harrell and the offense, you can't really say they've been bad this year, but this was a bad day at the office for Graham Harrell going back to Texas Tech. For JT Daniels in his career, this might be the worst game he's played. And both of them needed to perform. Graham Harrell as an OC and JT Daniels today. So if Graham Harrell is going to be looked at as maybe a guy to replace Neil Brown, and I've thought that could be a good idea. I love the man. I think he brings that young swag as an offensive genius who's really, really smart. And it's kind of the way of the world in football these days. A Sean McVay, a Cliff Kingsbury, even Dane Holgerson 10 years ago. That young offensive guru gets a head coaching job eventually. Don't want to let him go somewhere else. But it's games like this that make you think, is he ready? Are you promoting a man who had a really bad day at the office offensively as well? So no one it should be safe right now. The seat should be hot. But again, I said Neil Brown had to be on the hot seat this year. And after 6-7 and a mediocre bowl loss last season, and it feeling the program was going from trusting a climb to dipping down, and what are you trusting now in year 4? I said he had to be on the hot seat. Okay, I got some flack for that. It's been up and down this year for sure. Okay, and 3 out of 4 were wins prior to this game. So it's not feeling so good now again with a losing record at 3-4 as we're speaking. And I don't think he's going to be fired at the end of this season. I do think the recruiting class is something to think about, because you don't want to lose those recruits. White and Rodney Gallagher could be game-changing players. Every week I feel like I'm putting a story up on how they had a monster game. And I'm talking about record-setting, ridiculous game, even for high school level. So you don't want to lose those kids. You don't want to move a recruiting class from 30 to 35 to 50 or 60 or, oh my God, where's the future of the program, regardless of who's the head coach. Because it will be a while to build back up. Neil Brown's been doing this recruiting for the next several years. He's recruiting kids and sending offers to kids in 2025. Now, obviously, he's not going to stay there and be there if they keep on losing, but it will hurt the situation of recruiting. So to make this decision next year while you're paying a buyout, that is hard to swallow, to be honest with you. But again, I will admit, I thought after the Baylor win that, okay, I can feel better about giving him more time. I thought maybe, okay, after the Baylor win, okay, that was really impressive. They needed the win. Yeah, you can say backyard brawl on the road against Pitt. That was a ranked team then. They were a defending conference champ despite now looking different as a team. You beat the spread actually and played really well in that game. Candace was bad, but Jalen Daniels is really good. And obviously they've not been good since he got hurt, but they haven't had him. And then Texas is a ranked team that is really, really good and almost beat Alabama. So, yeah, they lost to Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is really good. So, no longer is that really a bad loss for the Longhorns. So, you could say all of that once you feel good about a win over Baylor. And then if you get this win against a quality team, even especially if it's on the road and your schedule's getting rough the rest of the season now to try to find 3 more wins for bowl eligibility, now sitting at 3-4. I'm not sure where they are. The meat of the schedule is coming up. This is a hard stretch of the schedule. They lost games they weren't supposed to lose for people that were predicting this team to get 6 wins. The reason why people prior to the season said 4 wins, which could happen now, is because they thought they would have some hiccups early in the season and then just get pounded at the end of the season, which if this is the Mountaineer team that shows up, that could happen. But if this was 4-3, you had a second conference win, yeah, it'd still be rough the rest of the way, but probably 2 more wins can happen for at least a mediocre bowl game. It wouldn't be a special year. It wouldn't be acceptable. It is lower than expectations for the 15th winningest program in college football history and for the size of the program, especially the future of the Big 12. You feel like looking at history, looking at size, looking at money, looking at revenue, looking at fan interest, looking at eyeballs. Yeah, you're adding some teams in there, but West Virginia should be at the top of the Big 12, or at least getting near it. It certainly should be at the middle of the Big 12 for crying out loud. Right now, they're at the bottom of the Big 12. You got to be better than the bottom of the conference, especially for a conference that's barely clinging to being a major conference with everything that's going on, even though they're adding teams and you're losing Oklahoma and Texas as the top brands. So, yeah, we know about the deal that's been reported, but that could hurt the future at some point. And in viability, if you ever want to leave the Big 12, I mean, I think West Virginia as a program is very viable to other conferences, and more so than in the past to the ACC now, because media market doesn't matter as much. They can have both Pitt and West Virginia because it is about subscribers and eyeballs, not as much media members being from the same market as before. And yeah, there's other issues, but you're clinging to being a really good athletic program, football, basketball, all through Olympic sports. That's what it was even a couple years ago. And that's certainly what it was 10 years ago when other conferences didn't want you and you end up in the Big 12. And it worked out maybe early on a little bit, but and certainly you could argue it's worked out at times in basketball, but not in football. And I'm not going to debate all day on the issues there because certainly travel's a problem, but there's no excuses for this. I don't care where you're playing, what conference you're in. This is year 4. You're not losing to Murderers Row. Yeah, Texas Tech is a good team, but they're not Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State. And again, this is year 4. It's been dipping. It's not like this is an aberration season. The Liberty Bowl win of a few years ago over a good Army team, that felt like a climb. But that's not a major bowl game. We're not talking about the Sugar Bowl here, the Orange Bowl here. So it's not like you have that to hang your hat on like Dana Holgorsen did early in his tenure. He at least had the Orange Bowl. And then, yeah, there were some disappointments, but he had a lot of 8-win seasons and an Orange Bowl. So that wasn't good enough for West Virginia fans. And I'm not saying it was good enough for me. And I do agree that the divorce had to happen when it did. But his early tenure and his overall tenure blows Neil Brown's out of the water right now. So eventually something has to give, which I put on the site. And I guess I'm going to pen or verbally offer yet again. I'm going to go to the chat now because it's just me ranting. This is supposed to be a vent session for all of you, but I knew this was going to happen, and I wanted to get more of you in the chat because I didn't see much of you early on. I don't know if you're drinking your sorrows. If you're just tuning in, and obviously you're aware of the game or you wouldn't probably be tuning in. Hopefully I'm not breaking that news to you, but 48-10 Texas Tech. And I think the issue also, and I put this on a tweet, it's not so much losing. Texas Tech is good. They beat Texas. If you lose a close game, if it's 48-44, yeah, that's going to suck. It's going to sting. You're still 3-4. You're still 1-3 in conference. All the same things I said about trusting the climb and year 4 and the record and being under 500 and lack of big wins and just you can't have a 20-22 overall mark in 4 years as a head coach of a program like West Virginia. I get all that. It wouldn't make me feel better. It wouldn't make you feel better. It would still be a really dark situation to try to dig out of to get in a bowl game the rest of the year with a hard schedule. However, with the recruiting class coming in, knowing the buyout, knowing he's going to be back, and the other good things he has done at the program, if these are close losses, if all of them are close losses, then okay, you could say maybe something can push. but you add the Texas game in, which was after a 2-game win streak. You felt good after the Black Diamond Trophy win, and then you ruin those good vibes with the Texas just horrible showing, to say the least, in Austin. They're both road games, but still. And then you do this again. So the issues are not losing to Texas or Texas Tech. These are good teams. The issue is losing the way you're losing. You're out of the Texas game in the first half. You're basically done. The final score wasn't even indicative of how much of a blowout that was in favor of the Longhorns, really. And then this game, Texas Tech gets the points that Texas didn't put up against the Mountaineers, and they win it even in more impressive fashion, 48-10. Right now, based on what happens with Oklahoma State the rest of the year and based on what TCU is doing, who, by the way, is the next opponent for the Mountaineers, a top 10 Horned Frogs team that beat Oklahoma State that looks like the best of the conference. It won't be a playoff team, but that's a good team, and they could absolutely destroy West Virginia even at home and embarrass them further if the Mountaineers aren't careful. Certainly if they put this effort in, it could be 50, 60 plus to whatever West Virginia happens to muster. But Texas Tech might be the second best team in the conference right now. You can make that argument. Certainly it's not Oklahoma this year. You could make that argument. It's Kansas no longer. Kansas State, they can beat teams, but are they really up there? You could argue that. I'm going to go a little bit to the chat now. We don't even beat Baylor if their quarterback doesn't get concussed. You know, the win against Baylor is a big win. It was a needed win. I'm not going to stomp on it and say it doesn't count or something. Yeah, Neil Brown had that Kansas State win against a ranked team years ago, but that's year 1 or 2. It doesn't matter as much. Year 4 is a bigger deal. Virginia Tech did get exposed last year. They weren't really good, even though they were a ranked team. Same thing this year. I don't think he had a real legit big win entering this season. I'm going to go ahead and give him the Baylor win if you isolate it to just that moment. They needed it. It was at home. They played well. All the things that went wrong prior were fixed, and they got a win. They did what they had to do. And that was a prior ranked team that I honestly believe, even though, you know, who knows about the future now. They did beat Kansas, maybe getting back in the ranking. It is possible now. But the week earlier, they lost to a top 10 Oklahoma State team. That was a bit rough for me for them to drop out of the top 25. I would have still ranked them. So that would have then been a ranked win, even though it doesn't count as one. So I'm not gonna stomp on that game, but you're not wrong. Okay. They had a quarterback issue. They had other issues. And West Virginia has been very injured as well, obviously. You didn't have Charles Woods most of this season since the backyard brawl in here. You're bookending not having Charles Woods, who's your best member of the secondary and only veteran there. And I put something up on the site too. Obviously, that's really impacted a couple of these games this year. Certainly, Kansas and Texas might have been different with him on the field. C.J. Donaldson emerges, you then lose him. I get it. Tony Mathis has a great game, but then not so much. And just everyone wasn't good in this Texas Tech game. I get it. And that, you know, so you can poke holes in the Baylor win, but I'm not going to necessarily do that. But, you know, it's certainly rough here. I see a lot of chat action here. And some of this is going where I was saying. So I don't know if you're listening to me or just talking amongst yourself. But Sean McKinley, that's another solid point. I didn't even, you know, that's on the roster. I'm talking about recruits and people that have committed in terms of Rodney Gallagher and Jaheim White for the future, for next season. These are seniors that are having monster performance week after week in high school that have committed to West Virginia. And Rodney Gallagher's tweeting up a storm, so I would be shocked if he doesn't come, even with the transfer portal. So say you get both of them to stay. That's a big coup for Neil Brown, even though this team is not winning, to get those kids. They, quite frankly, they could go to Pitt, which is, you know, they're not doing great this year, but I maybe, you know, that's a program doing better right now in the same geographic area. And I know that other programs will certainly want those kids. I'm not saying they're, you know, Terrell Pryor coming out of school, but those are good ads, good commits. But you can go where Sean's going, which would make this even more doomsday and paint this with a worse brush. It would be darker. Okay. Nico, is he going to leave if you fire Neil Brown? And again, I said Neil Brown had to be on the hot seat entering this season. I put a bar of 6 wins. I even was trying to maybe argue 5, but I really wanted to be 6 because you had a mediocre bowl loss. You're dipping. To sell trust in the climb, regardless of a recruiting class and a buyout, you need to freaking win enough games. And no one's expecting a natty here at WVU, but to expect a couple bowl wins every 5 years to expect every now and then to contend for a major conference championship that they used to be able to contend for in a conference that is not exactly the best in the country. Certainly, this isn't the SEC. While you're in the Big 12, that's very, very reasonable. And West Virginia is far from that happening right now. But they do have a bright spot with a young QB. So Daniels isn't going to be there forever, regardless of him recovering. I'm sure he'll be better next game than this one. I mean, JT Daniels is a really smart kid. He has a pedigree. He's harder on himself than anybody else. This wasn't a clean game for him. It was a bad game for him. Maybe the worst game of his career, really. But I'm sure he'll pick it up and be better next time. And his sights are not to be a Mountaineer legend, honestly. He doesn't want to be the next Geno Smith. Let's be real. Or Pat White. Or Rasheed Marshall, who I do a podcast with. He's looking to get himself to the NFL. And being here was to get with Graham Harrell, who he was with at USC, even though he was the backup there, and get his game right, get him healthy. He's been healthy, even though he wasn't in the past, the last few years, and get on the field. He's not going to get on the field at Georgia, and then maybe have a chance in the NFL. Because that wasn't going to happen if he just didn't play or went somewhere else or whatever. I mean, out of his options, this was the best option for him. So that's why he's at West Virginia. But Nico, Garrett Green, who's still young, even Will Crowder. I mean, West Virginia has solid QB play, young QB play that could be there for several more years, all three of them really, under JT Daniels. And Nico's that top recruit that was a big deal when Neil Brown landed him. Again, no West Virginia ties, just a solid top recruit to add. So if you're going to lose him, that would give me pause as well, because JT Daniels is not going to be there forever. Garrett Green's a guy who can run, but not really do much throwing. They don't trust him to throw. This isn't Pat White. You're not going to run a spread offense. Will Crowder's okay as a backup, and he has had his moments. I know he hasn't actually incompleted a pass. Every pass he's thrown with West Virginia has been completed. But, who knows about more than that? Your future is Nico. So if you do lose him, if he's that tied to Neil Brown, that's a problem as well in that decision. But okay, Wendell, I think Nico stays even if you fire Neil Brown. If you don't fire Neil Brown, how many people stay? That's another point as well. Are you going to have players that are still going to be around that say aren't the Dante Stills who's gone no matter what, obviously, but players that are going to still be around to say, I secretly or maybe outwardly now these days want to play for somebody else, or I don't want to put up with Neil Brown any further, or I want a Klein to be trusted, or I can't trust the Klein. I want something to change. So like Messidor, and he had his other reasons, but I'm going to try to go somewhere else. You might have players leaving because you're keeping Neil Brown. And again, I do think he stays and he'll be the coach next year. I think if this type of season happens again next year, though, he then will be removed. I don't think it's going to be 5 years and having back-to-back seasons where you miss a bowl game. I don't think they'll do that. But I do believe he's back next year. But regardless, say he's not, or say he's gone after another bad season next year. Does that hurt recruiting classes coming in? Do they want to play for Neil Brown and love Neil Brown so much that they're only there for Neil Brown and they don't want to come if you don't have Neil Brown? I mean, he's a nice guy. I can see them liking him personally, at least. Maybe the other coaches are also tied to him. Maybe Graham Harrell wants to move on if Neil Brown's not there. Neil Brown's also recruiting these coaches. So maybe that's all part of it. Or the other end where Wendell's going is maybe they all want Neil Brown to be gone. So maybe they actually would be mad and would leave if Neil Brown is kept. All of that needs to be decided. All of that needs to be known before you're Shane Lyons and you make a decision. We all know he's going to keep Neil Brown. We all know the relationship that they have. We all know the buyout. So at the end of the day, he's going to be there next year. But that's all things that you really should be aware of, should be thinking about, and need to know before those decisions are made. Got a lot to do still here after this game with our coverage, so I'm not going to fire this off for this hours on end here as a post-game show. I want to do something, though, just because I knew you guys would really be in the chat. And to be honest with you, I wanted to offer you guys an event session in the chat, even if not with me. So I'm happy I could talk to some of you here and just you talk amongst yourself. Is that a therapy session for you? I'm happy if it is. Transfer portal changes how much those recruits matter. Well, that's true as well. I mean, you can replace players if you do lose recruits, but you don't want to get into the habit of you're just losing tons of players. And West Virginia has lost players the last few years, even though they did bring in others like, say, JT Daniels. No, again, I'm not saying never fire Neil Brown here, Yates. Again, I could dare you to search anywhere and tell me where I'm an apologist. That's just factually not true. I have, but earlier than a lot of other media members, to be honest with you, in terms of me catching some flack, I said this guy was on the hot seat. I put a bar at a win total. I said he had to win 6. I said weeks ago while I'm sitting in front of him. Okay, so I'm right there in front of him. I'm not just saying it, on a show or in front of my computer or on the phone, and then I don't go around the facility like some bloggers out there. I am there. I am covering this team. I am in the front row because I record them to put them up on the channel. He sees me. He knows what I said. I guarantee it at this point. I've heard it. I know he does. It's not like it's not professional there, but he's a really nice guy. I want him to succeed. But I said something had to give and then went back in there right in front of him. So I'm not scared to say anything. That's just crazy. Okay. I put the pressure on and then I went back in there. However, the recruiting thing and the transfer thing is real, and it will be harder for you if you lose those top recruits, lose those current players, and then say to a new coach, the cupboard is completely bare yet again, exactly what Neil Brown inherited. That's why people gave him a year or so mulligan from what he inherited. It was so bare, but you would do that again to a new coach. So I'm not saying you don't move on to Neil Brown. Again, I probably would this season. I think he'll be back next year, but I personally probably would fire him this year if you don't get at least 6 wins, which I don't see happening with this remaining schedule. However, with that said, you could have a situation where it's tougher than moving forward. And I would not expect Mountaineer Nation here that if you fire Neil Brown, that all of a sudden a new coach walks in the building and you're all of a sudden winning 8 or 9 games. You're probably looking at a 4 or 5 year journey regardless, with Neil Brown or not with him. This could get really bad. And especially with conference realignment going on now, this is a really bad time for the program to be this down. And actually, factually, you could argue the program has not been this down since 1979 before Don Nalen. I wasn't alive, but I know the history. Okay, I know that 0-2 start then. I know the 0-2 start this year. I know what Don Nalen had to fix and inherit and then build up to a national power program. I know the 3-8 season Rich Rodriguez had right away because Don Nalen didn't leave him that much. And he then had to build it up to where it was Pat White, Steve Sladen, and a national power program. It might be hard to ever be a national power program right now, but even to be a regional power program, a lot needs done with or without Neil Brown. And if Rodney Gallagher tells me, if you fire Neil Brown, I'm not coming, or Nico tells me, if you fire Neil Brown, I'm leaving, I would think about it. Because who are you really bringing in there, to be honest with you? And I put that up to, I don't know who you guys would want to replace Neil Brown if you had ideas there. Obviously, there's a lot of names that would be said. Yeah, 6 wins is tough now. I mean, again, you need 3 more. They need to go 3-2. And you got a lot of ranked teams. And Oklahoma is not good this year. This is the worst Oklahoma Sooners team of my generation. However, a lot of talent still there. And from what we've seen, they could certainly still be West Virginia. Certainly could still be West Virginia. I mean, there's no guarantee win for WVU against Oklahoma. And yeah, there are a lot of good coaches out there. It'll be interesting. And I put that up on the site, so go ahead and find that. Who they could bring in. There are a lot of West Virginia ties, people of Tony Gibson and company. There's a lot of people who are from West Virginia that are thought of. I don't think Jimbo's coming. No, I don't think Nick Saban's coming. Again, I previously liked Graham Harrell as that decision. He might want to leave. He might not want to stay. If Neil Brown's gone, who knows? Again, he's that young offensive mind. It kind of fits what goes on in football these days, but right now, you're not impressed with the offense either. So there needs to be a lot of closed door meetings, come to Jesus meetings. Doesn't matter who's there. It's going to be a tough road because you have a solid recruiting class coming in. But if you have players transfer, if you have those recruits no longer want to come, then that'll be something to think about. If that is, I mean, literally, I had a recruit flat out tell me he's there. He's coming to West Virginia because of the coaching staff. And now you want to take away the coaching staff. Do you want to take it away and lose a guy who runs for 400 yards every game? It's high school level, but that's something. Not every back in the country is doing that. So again, I've been a harsh critic of Neil Brown for a very, very long time before others. I put a bar on this season. I said he was in the hot seat, and then I went in the press room and I got some eyes. However, I wouldn't do it if I know factually I'm losing all these recruits coming in because this buyout's so high. I don't see it happening anyway. But yeah, the bowl situation could have saved this and made everyone feel better. You win this game after the Baylor game, you get in a bowl game, even if you lose the mediocre bowl game and ends up 6-7 again, you feel better because after 0-2, and the schedule has been tough this year, and it was tougher this year than last year, you feel better about it. But this is going to be a 4-win season or a 5-win season, which was exactly what was predicted by many national media members and a lot of fans. And I thought they'd actually win 6 games. Honestly, I'll be real. I picked it to 6-6, but a lot of national media members would say 3, 4, 5 wins ceiling for West Virginia. And you guys, the fans, were really mad about it. They're going to be right. And 2 of the losses are really bad ones. And they're the good teams. Texas and Texas Tech are good teams. But there's a difference between losing. And as I said at the top of this, it's one thing to lose, especially to a good team. And I do believe Texas Tech is a good team. Texas, they have shown they are a good team. Okay. Pitt is not a great team, but they're an okay team. And one of their losses is to Tennessee, who maybe is going to get into the playoff, even though they also lost to Georgia Tech. They dealt with tons of injuries as well. So those 3 losses are not horrible. They're okay losses. You should have really beat Pitt. And then you lose to Texas and Texas Tech. And then, yeah, Kansas. At the time, they had Jalen Daniels. All of those are not, it's not like you're getting dumped on by horrendous teams. However, you lose to Kansas when you're a 13.5-point favorite. And yeah, they had Jalen Daniels, but all those 5 wins show me one that was a really, really good one. And West Virginia is probably the best one. And the Mountaineers aren't that great this year, obviously. So maybe they were a little overrated at the time. And then Townsend FCS, Virginia Tech's not a good program. They haven't been for years. They're worse off than West Virginia, really. Yeah, you win a trophy, but my Lord. And it's not just losing again. If you lost to Texas and Texas Tech in close games, these are going to be ranked teams. Okay. 48-10. You're out of it right away. You're out of it in the first half against Texas. It could have been worse. That's getting embarrassing. That's the embarrassment that I think really, agitates and pisses off some fans and allows these shows to happen where you got to talk about a coach getting fired for 30 minutes. Yeah, what's up, Kuz? I've been dropping the mic, but I think I'm actually going to have to stop dropping the mic on this particular post-game show here because I'm going to lose my voice. I got to go find some pineapple juice or something. And I don't think anything's going to matter from what we've been talking about anyway. I'm happy to, again, provide this vent session for the fans here. And I did this the other day, touched on basketball season as well. Didn't get nearly as many of you in the chat then, even though I did actually last time I did a Mountaineer live chat. But I knew I was going to get some action here after this one. I'm at home. I didn't go to Lubbock, obviously. So I wanted to put this up. I wanted to do this. Obviously, the game recap is over there at WV Sports Now, at WV Sports Now on Twitter. I'm going to have shows. There will be literal mic drop shows on this with the Believe Network. I touch on West Virginia there as well, and it will appear on this site if it is about the Mountaineers. So, and outside of that, we're going to have tons of coverage. I will try to muster up some commentaries and feature stories that I promise each week and every day. But quite frankly, as I said at the top of this show, it is just death, taxes, and rinse repeat, the same damn thing. I already wrote Something Gotta Give. I already did you there at the crossroads. And here we are. So copy and paste it over again. I'm just going to really release the same thing, write it again. I mean, I don't know what I'm adding here outside of changing some scores and stats. We got the same thing. I still feel the same way. The opinions are the same. And now we have the example of it not changing. And the crossroads is now a hole you got to dig out of. And that schedule's tough coming up. So I'm not sure how they do it. And as I said, starting the season, Neil Brown had to be on the hot seat unless you got to a bowl game. He's not going to be fired because of the buyout and the recruiting class, and Shane Lyons and him are close. They are in lockstep, which is the exact words that somebody very close to the program told me. They are in lockstep. So he's not going anywhere. However, if you fail to make a bowl game this year, I would make the decision. And I really like the guy. So that sucks. And yeah, it's more every other week. Yeah, I guess, because that's been the roller coaster ride. You feel really good after the Baylor win. And I actually say, okay, let me pump the brakes. I'm going to not do any Neil Brown, needs fire stories. You're feeling better. They get a win. It feels like Texas Tech is a good team, really good team, but they're the same record as you. They've had a roller coaster ride as well. They got some injuries they're dealing with. Yeah, they're at home, but okay, it could go either way. Let's see. Are you feeling better about things? The vibe was better at the facility last week. It was like a team that was confident, that thought, okay, we can make something happen this year. And I'm sure they'll be confident again. It's not like they're going to have their heads down here. But then you see this. I mean, this makes let's be fair. This makes you forget about the Baylor win. Isolate it, it's still a quality win. It's really the only one this year that's quality. But regardless, and you have it followed by this, by 48-10 against Texas Tech, who beats you again. Dante Stills can't buy a win against that program. He talked about how motivated he was, how he wanted that win to finish out his college career, to at least finally say, I beat Texas Tech. And I don't mean when he was a freshman where he didn't really do much. I'm talking about Texas Tech, Dante Stills, starter, lost 3 straight, wanted a win. He said it. I asked him, are you motivated because you want a dub? He does. He had it circled on the calendar before the year. 48-10. How's he feel right now? Crap, I would imagine. Like crap. Because there's no more Texas Tech games for him. I mean, that's it. Texas Tech and any players in the NFL, if he gets there that are from Texas Tech, are going to be doing some heavy bragging at Dante Stills, because, boy, did they rough that team up that he was on during his tenure at WVU. And it's unfortunate. I said the same thing when Darius left, obviously. It's unfortunate you have the Stills brothers, who, that's a great brotherhood. They are great players, but really at a down period for the program. You wish you had them 10, 15 years earlier, or whatever the future will be, because the greatness of them, when this team does this, what are you doing? That'll be it, though. I think I'm going to wrap it up. Again, I totally empathize and realize a lot of fans are no longer trusting the climb. There is no possible way I or anyone can try to convince anybody to legitimately trust a climb of West Virginia that is now below 500, that is below 500 in 4 years with Neil Brown, that is lacking big wins, that does this roller coaster ride of you feel good, you feel bad, you feel good, you feel really, really bad. No, I can't. I'm not going to try to do that. And I go to the facility. I'm not going to lie. I can't. They can ban me all they want. I mean, the program, it's going to be hard for them to sell trusting a climb, trusting whatever, and have a slogan they want to offer. Year 5, it's rough. 48-10. You're 3-4. You have 1 conference win. It's rough for the rest of the season. Can you get a bowl win? Can you get into a bowl game? That would be how people would then start trusting. No more air raid coaches. I don't get that. I don't know what you're talking about there. First off, Graham Harrell's offense is way more balanced than a traditional air raid. He keeps saying that. It's factually true. Even go back to North Texas years ago. I fact-checked him. That team in North Texas had more rushing yards than passing yards. So he's from the Mike Leach tree, but to say he's running an air raid where he's just pass happy is just factually not the case. Second of all, the young offensive minds who run an air raid style of offense with a significant amount of passing that also can run, and the run can set up the pass, that's what has success in college football or the NFL these days, and certainly the last 4 or 5 years. That's the current trend, if not longer ago. So I don't know how that could be your issue. Also, West Virginia had a great, exciting tenure with Geno Smith running an air raid, obviously winning an Orange Bowl. So really the best win of the last 15 years is off an air raid offense. I don't know how you hate the air raid. There's a lot of things to have problems with, and I get the air raid wasn't good in this game. The team wasn't good in this game. And the risk is the interceptions, which happened in this game. It was JT Daniels' worst game of his career. But overall, the air raid's not the problem for West Virginia. There's a lot of problems. They got 99 of them. That ain't one of them. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, last 20 years, yeah, okay, it's been spread or air raid, but again, it's been spread. It was very successful. It's been air raid. It's also been successful. I don't understand this mentality that now we hate the air raid offense. The air raid offense is not the problem right now. they've had success with that offense. They had success with the spread. And Neil Brown's not a spread guy, so you're not going to run into the spread. Quite frankly, it was actually a big deal that Neil Brown kind of gave the keys away to the offense this year because that was kind of his baby prior, regardless of who was the coach. But yeah, the scheme isn't the issue. But yeah, it's been those options regardless. It doesn't matter. But the West Virginia program got 99 problems, and it's about who you trust, who you think is going to lead this program. How do you feel about the future? How will a decision about a coach impact future recruits, current players, especially with the transfer portal in play? Can you finish this season strong? Do you need to care about finishing this season strong? Are you, if you're not caring about this season the rest of the way, worrying about JT Daniels personally, or are you throwing some young QBs in? Because is it about his NFL future or the program? I know he came there for his future, but Lord, if you're sitting there with 3 wins and 2 games left and it doesn't matter, is he starting to be nice to him to put on some film for the NFL, or are you going to try to see what you have with Nico, Will Crowder, or Garrett Green? And Garrett Green came in this game, even though they're all or on the depth chart. I am going to wrap it up, though, because I can go on and on and on here, and I'm fired up. You're fired up. I get it. 48-10. Lord, it was ugly. It was not good at all. It was really, really bad, and it was also really, really ugly in Lubbock for the Mountaineers, who lose 48-10. Now 3-4 on the season, 1-3 in conference play. They have a lot of work ahead to try to dig out of this hole and somehow get into a bowl game or get close to one and give you some reason to trust the climb. Because right now, what's the reason to trust the West Virginia Mountaineers climb? I'll ask you this. I'll leave the show with that. I'll throw it out there. Why would you want to trust this climb? What gives you reason to trust this climb? I don't see a reason right now. Let me know if you do.